On episode 301 of the 40 Plus Fitness podcast, we meet with George Demirakos and discuss his book, Fix My Knee. You can find the full show notes at 40plusfitnesspodcast.com/301. The 40 Plus Fitness podcast is sponsored by Health IQ, an insurance company that helps health-conscious people like runners, cyclists, weightlifters, vegetarians, etc. get lower rates on their life insurance. Go to healthiq.com/40plus, that's 40PLUS, to support the show and see if you qualify. You get safe driver savings for your car insurance. Why doesn't life insurance work the same way? Well, Health IQ is making that happen. You're listening to this podcast because you care about your health and you're doing something about it. Health IQ can help you save money. To see if you qualify, get your free quote today at healthiq.com/40plus. Or mention the promo code 40plus when you talk to a Health IQ agent. Have you decided you're ready to make a change? To reclaim your health and fitness? The 40 Plus Fitness podcast is here for you. I'm your host, Alan Meisner. I'm an NSAM certified personal trainer with a specialization in corrective exercise and fitness nutrition. Let me be your coach as you find your way on your health and fitness journey. All right, let's go. Hello. Thank you for being a part of the 40 Plus Fitness podcast. I hope you're being good to yourself and the new year is being good to you. I'm in the process of moving to Florida. I mean, it'll be really nice to just be in one home for a while. I spent the weekend painting my home office. It's this kind of gaudy, bright yellow. But it makes me feel good, so, that's good for me. I was up a lot up and down the ladder, so it was kind of interesting. It was a movement pattern that my body wasn't really used to, so kind of interesting to spend about 3 days really up and down the ladder doing those types of things. And then, of course, I'm kickstarting my winter with the new year coming around, so I'm kind of cycling into ketosis. So I'm dealing with kind of the energy transfer thing that goes on when you're going from being off of ketosis into cycling into ketosis, doing the exercise, climbing up and down the ladder, the moving, the carrying boxes, all that entails. Now, I am hiring movers, so I'm not going to do the heavy stuff. I've learned that lesson a long, long time ago. They're professionals that can do 3 flights of floors with no problem. I cannot, so I will not. But I'll do a lot of box moving little things myself. So just making sure that I'm taking care of myself, keeping my energy level up, and a lot of movement things that I'll be doing. Another thing that's going on is I'm obviously taking on new clients for the new year, opening up my practice. I do have the time, so I am taking on new clients, and I'm really excited about that because I love helping people reach their health and fitness goals. And some of the clients that I've been working with for a while are really starting to kind of turn that corner. So it's really exciting to see that for them. And then the new clients that are coming on, the new energy, trying to build up the community. So I really would like for you to check it out. If you're serious about making 2018 your health and fitness year, then you should go to 40plusfitnesspodcast.com/train. I have 2 different versions. I have the one-on-one training and I have the group training. The group training is for the kind of person that doesn't need the total immersion and the total programming and all that. They know what they want to do. They know what they want to accomplish. And they are comfortable and want to be in a kind of a group setting with the community and all the other things that go along with that. The one-on-one is a little bit more direct. They get a lot more access to me. I answer their questions specifically. I set up specific programming. I go over their exercises. I critique their movement patterns. So it's really kind of an intense thing. So it's like having a personal trainer. I'm just not there counting your reps. But you can choose which one works the best for you. You can go to 40plusfitnesspodcast.com/train and learn a little bit about both of those. So now on to our guest. George Demirakos is a licensed physical therapist and certified athletic therapist who has worked with the Montreal Canadiens professional hockey team, the Canadian Tennis Championships, and with athletes in the 2004 and 2012 Olympic Games. He also worked as the physical therapist on the set of Mummy 3 as well as X-Men Days of Future Past. I think this is pretty cool to work on a movie set. I forgot to ask him about that during the interview, but I may check back with George once we publish this and ask him about that. Today, we're going to talk about his new book, Fix My Knee. So with no further ado, here's George Demirakos. So George, welcome to 40 Plus Fitness.
Thank you for having me.
Really excited about this book, Fix My Knee. When I saw the title on Amazon, I was like, okay, I've got to get this book. I've got to get this guy on, because a lot of my clients and my wife often complain about their knees. And they'll say things like, I can't do this, I can't work out, I can't walk because, it just hurts my knees. And then a lot of people even give up running. They love running, but they, have a knee problem and believe they can't run anymore. So I was encouraged by the book because it's not just a guide for preventing, but also healing the injuries to the knees. So could you take a minute and kind of let's go through the types of injuries and what's causing the pain and how someone can recognize the difference?
Sure. The way I like to break it down, there are two different types of injuries. There's traumatic, and then there's the non-traumatic. The traumatic ones are the ones that we can relate to much more quickly if you get hit, if you fall down. And the way I break those down is there's sprains, and sprains are pulled ligaments. A ligament connects from a bone to a bone, so there's no muscle contraction. So a sprained ligament, it would be that you've stretched or pulled a ligament, and the muscles around it will help to strengthen it, along with some stretching exercises. The strength is really going to help that. Again, whether it's in the knee in the front or on the sides, it's going to be a lot of the stability exercise, a lot of the strengthening. When it comes to strain, a strain is really a pulled muscle. So pulled muscle as well as a pulled tendon. So as everyone knows, a tendon will go from a muscle to a bone. So something that is strained, that's more of a pulled muscle with the tendon. So again, it comes down to the strengthening of the muscles around the area along with the proper flexibility to get that better. And then the third one was more the biggest question everyone asks is the tendinitis. I think the way I bring it up with my patients is, do you know what a tendinitis is? And the way I explain it to them is that the word itis is irritation of the word in front of it. For example, tendinitis would be irritation of the tendon, or bursitis is an irritation of the bursa, capsulitis, and so on. So I think that would be the three major traumatic type of injuries. Okay.
Now, so if you've had an event, so car wreck or you stepped off the curb wrong, that's a traumatic. It's probably a strain. There's sometimes there are tears, though. I mean, if it's pretty bad, it can actually be a tear.
Absolutely. A strain would be maybe a first degree or a light tear of a couple of fibers. A second degree strain is more from 10 to 90% of the fibers have either been stretched or torn. And a third degree strain actually means a complete muscle tear. And the way you'll know if you have a complete muscle tear, it's interesting, you won't feel any pain at all. But in that area, you won't be able to move, you won't be able to bend, you won't be able to do anything. So those are the three major, levels of muscle strains or pulled muscles.
Okay. And so the basic tendinitis is something that'll somewhat set on over time. You may not be able to go back and track it to an actual event, but there is an inflammation in your knee, and that's causing pressure or pain, and that's what most people are feeling when they start feeling problems with their knees, particularly if they didn't go through some kind of an event like a car wreck or stepping off a curb wrong.
Right. And in those cases, those are called more biomechanical issues. I think one of the most common ones are called Patellofemoral pain syndrome, or short for PSPS. And it basically means that the tendons around the kneecap or your patella are causing you pain due to repetitive motions, incorrect motions, but it's really based upon muscular imbalances.
Yeah. And that's what we commonly call runner's knee.
That's right.
Okay.
That's right.
So go ahead.
Yeah, I was just going to say that with these runner knee type of injuries, people don't realize that some of the biggest areas that they really need to work on would be the knee, but primarily on the inner part of the leg, the inner part of the knee, the muscles on the inner part. Not so much, at least at what research is showing from my experience, that the muscles on the outer part of one's leg is actually stronger than the muscles on the inner part. That's more of a generalization, but I tell most people, you know what, just stick your hand on the outer part of your leg and feel your muscles, and for most part, those muscles are strong and tight. And then I tell them, well, touch the muscles on the inner part of your leg. And with some people, when they touch those muscles on the inner part, it does not match the strength or the musculature on the outer part. So it might feel almost soft or not as strong as the outer part. And I say, well, that right there, you can see that there is an imbalance. So they really, just by sense of touch, they really feel the difference. That would be the first main area. And the next main area would be in the hips and in the glutes. And I think a lot of people don't really realize that hips and glute strength are definitely related to having a better knee or not.
Well, yeah, it's because it's part of a kinetic chain, and if one part of the chain is weak, then the other parts are going to have to compensate. So if you don't have good running form, or one side is weaker than another, those are things that over time are going to cause some of those problems. So,
absolutely.
So when someone is a runner or wants to be a runner, but they're afraid that they're going to hurt their knee, or they've had problems. I know when I was in the Army, and the way they made us run with boots and sometimes with packs and things like that. And I didn't necessarily use the best running form just because I was fatigued and whatnot. So I started having problems with my knees, and it was really more of just the mileage I was putting on them in a very short period of time and not really getting any recovery. If someone wants to run, just kind of put us through soup to nuts. What kind of regimen should they consider so that they can keep their knees healthy?
Sure. I think some of the main parts is to warm up properly before you go running. A warm up, either jogging on the spot or doing something in the area for about 5-10 minutes is really going to bring up the heat in the body. It's going to bring up the temperature, and it's definitely going to get you ready for running. Another thing would be stretching out your muscles, which is very important. And, some people are not crazy about the stretching, or it's kind of like, well, it's on the back burner, it's not important. For me, I always tell people, well, if you want to decrease having a chance of injuries, stretching shouldn't even be an option. It should be a priority. So stretching your muscles out, whether you're stretching your hamstrings, your calves, or your quads muscles, your hip flexors, I think is very important. What I advise my patients is holding it for about a minute, because research has shown that muscles actually don't relax for the first 15 seconds. After the 15 seconds, what's called your inside the muscles, the Golgi tendons and the muscle spindles start to let go from kind of freaking out the first 15 seconds, and they start to let go, and that's when your muscles really start to stretch out. So I think stretching for about a minute or even more would really help you out.
I want hear this out, because this is particularly important. As you get older, the ability of that tendon to let go it gets a little bit soft on that. It doesn't work quite as fast. So when you did the 30-second stretching when you were younger, you were probably getting enough when you were younger. But when we're over 40, we need to make sure we're getting a good solid stretch, and that's a good minute each time.
Yeah, you can get away with it when you're younger, but when you're older, it catches up to you. So stretching out for at least a minute would actually really help.
Yeah.
Well, some of the other things, please go ahead.
One of the interesting things that you talked about in the book that I thought was really interesting was the concept of foot strength and how that is affecting the knee. Could you kind of get into that? Because I think that's an area, we're always wearing shoes and almost, I ran a marathon one time and there was a guy running barefoot. And this was in California. And unfortunately, our time, they turned us down this path, and we were running through this artichoke, this dirt road where they're planting artichokes, and finished down there. And I know after running 26 miles in the last tenth of a mile that you had to, or 2/10 of a mile that you had to run on this, we ran down this dirt road. And I know he had to be hurting, because my feet were hurting through my shoes running down this dirt road. But there's some good evidence that being barefoot, strengthening your feet is important for knee health.
Oh, absolutely. I think that's one of the major weaknesses on people, and that is weak foot strength. So not to mix it up between the ankles, but really the muscles underneath your foot. There's actually 3 levels of muscles underneath your feet. And we don't really think of strengthening those areas. You can part to become stronger, it will really help your running, through balancing work or specific toe strengthening, opening and closing your toes, crunching your toes. Those type of exercises would really help it out. And now that you brought up the barefoot concept, is the people who run barefoot over time will actually get stronger because they're going to be using those muscles. I actually give an example when you're comparing, say, the African individuals versus the North American individuals, where they're not using shoes or they're using the limited amount of shoes. It actually makes your muscles work harder in the limited type of shoes, or I don't even remember what they're exactly called, those shoes. But the less support you have in a shoe, the more your muscles are going to have to work harder, and they're going to make your foot stronger. And if your foot is stronger, then your knee is stronger. And if your knee is stronger, then there's much less pressure in that chain, which makes you much more efficient. Strengthening your hips also will really help. In terms of the shoes, I think a lot of it is, padding is good for your feet and it doesn't let your arches fall down, but it's mostly marketing.
Yeah.
It's a lot of marketing that you need a lot of support. You need this and you need that. In truth, you don't really need it. There's not that much evidence showing that you really need all that support. You probably would feel good in those shoes because maybe the muscles in those areas are not strong enough.
Yeah.
So I think a really good program to strengthen your feet, and I give that all the time, lots of foot strengthening would actually help the rest of the chain.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's, you can invest in shoes and they will somewhat compensate for things that you're not doing right. But in the end, a stronger foot's going to save you money on shoes.
Absolutely. I always say you don't really need to spend the $150 or the $200 type of running shoe. And most people, when I hear when they do their running, they go through a shoe every year. And I'm thinking that's it can get quite expensive.
Yeah. I have some friends that run a lot more than that, and they probably go through a shoe probably every 2 months. It's
wow.
Yeah. So because you're supposed to change. They tell you you're supposed, and again, this is probably marketing as well, that you're supposed to change out your shoes like every 500 miles. And
correct.
So
but just imagine now if your foot got stronger. Number one, maybe you will have less need for buying such thick padded soles, and you can probably go longer because I would almost say those padded shoes are almost like an orthotic because they're giving you the support. It's as if you bought strength, but if you can actually create the strength in your feet, like I said, through all the movements of your toes, opening and closing, moving your big toe out, will actually strengthen your muscles, help you with your arches, and definitely decrease any discomfort.
Okay, we're taking a little break because I need to let you know that the 40 Plus Fitness podcast is sponsored by Health IQ, an insurance company that helps health-conscious people like runners, cyclists, weightlifters, vegetarians, etc. get lower rates on their life insurance. Go to healthiq/40plus, that's 40PLUS, to support the show and see if you qualify. Another area where people really tend to, have some difficulty, they get concerned that they're going to hurt themselves, is in weightlifting, and particularly movements like squats, hack squats, deadlifts, and lunges. Mm-hmm. I told my doctor that I was lifting, and I was doing deadlift. He asked questions: what exercise you doing? What lifting you doing? I said deadlift, and he was like, "Oh, that's not good." And I'm thinking, well, it is good if you use proper form.
That's right.
And in the book, you kind of get into, so let's kind of talk about, the squats, hack squats, deadlifts, and lunges, and how we can make sure that we're using good form to protect our knees when we're doing those lifts.
Sure. We can start off with, the king of exercise, which is squats. And I believe that squats are one of the best exercises for strengthening your legs, whether it's the quads, your low back, your glutes, and also helping with your lower back and reversing the curves. Some of the mistakes that people do when they do the squats is the number one thing that I see is letting your knees fall in. When your knees fall in, that actually changes your alignment, puts a lot of stress on your knees with the amount of weight that can cause knee injuries. Another thing would be say, having too little of an arch in your low back. That would be something that you should take a look at. And lowering to 90 degrees or less than that, I mean, you are going to get strong, but you're not going to be strong enough. I mean, we do a lot of movements past the 90 degrees, and I'm of a believer that going past 90 degrees will only help you, will actually not make your knees get any worse.
Yeah, and the reason I tell people this is, and my clients, they all know that I love squats as well, is that if you try to stop your body weight before you get to 90 degrees, you can't engage your glutes to do that. So you're using your quadriceps entirely to basically stop the weight, and that's where you have the potential for a strain or a tear. If you allow your body to go down in a controlled way, down below 90 degrees, then your glutes can really fire up in that bottom. They can stop you, and then they can start the weight moving forward. Once you get past 90 degrees, the quadriceps can re-engage, and that's going to give you a good clean lift to ensure that you're using the full musculature of your body. And your glutes are going to be one of the strongest muscles that you have. So you really want to make sure they're engaged at that bottom. And if you stop early, you're never giving your glutes an opportunity to do that for you.
And I think you brought up a really good point, and that is that most people focus on their quads. They just want quad power. But as you said properly and correctly, most of the power will come from your hips. Most of the power comes from your glutes. So strengthening your hip and glutes area is very important to helping improve your knee health, improving your squats, improving your deadlifts. But I find that most people don't really focus on that area.
Well, the hack squats is definitely an exercise that's going to put a little bit more emphasis on the quads, just on the basis of the angle and the way you're doing them. Could you talk a little bit about hack squats? Let me go ahead and explain to someone if they don't know what a hack squat is. It's a piece of machinery that usually has like a little sled that you basically set your hips into. It's got a foot place, and you put your feet on the place and you slide down and then press up. So unlike a leg press where you're pressing the weight away from you, you have the weight on a little sled that you're pushing up. And it does, depending on where your feet are located on the machine, it really can emphasize the quads. The quads as you do the lift.
That's right. Yeah, that's right. And some of the things to watch out for is placing your feet properly. It's very important in doing the hack squat really well. I think if you practice good form, the exercise is safe and it won't harm your knees. Just make sure that you're always pointing your toes slightly outward when you're putting your feet on the platform. And that way, that's going to make the quad muscles engage much more and takes the pressure off, say, the ligaments in your knee. It's been reported if you're really turning out, you're putting a lot of pressure on your MCL part of your knees. So finding them a little bit forward would actually help.
Yeah.
And your hack squat can be done in several different ways, different stances, different widths. But pick the position that you feel most comfortable. Oh, and I would say the last thing is people have that tendency to really want to put a lot of weight. I'm more of a believer is your technique first, get the proper form, and then you can start putting more and more weight as long as you're comfortable and your technique is correct. There's no point in putting a ton of weight and then you're all over the place.
Yeah, and that's how I am with my clients. I'm like, look, we're gonna do body weight squats or supported body weight squats until you feel comfortable doing the squat and you feel comfortable with where your feet are, you feel comfortable that you're getting the right depth, your balance and everything is on, and then we're going to progress to make that a more difficult exercise. So there's the progression of getting stronger. But yes, in all of these, form is extremely important. And probably to me, the one exercise that you must use good form or you actually will hurt yourself is the deadlift. Could you talk about the deadlift a little bit?
Sure. I think along with the squats, the deadlifts are, I think, the two most important lower body exercises that you can do. I actually prefer the deadlift just a little bit more than the squat because it really works the back part of you, or what we call the posterior chain of your body, which is normally one's weak link. Even for athletes, some of the things that you should watch out for in a deadlift is your hand position. People normally use an overhand grip, but I would put one underhand and one overhand grip. And maintaining a good hip width stance with your toes pointing slightly away from the middle would really help. And try not to bounce. That's one thing I was trying to tell one of my clients last week is don't bounce the barbell off the floor because that can cause an injury.
Yeah. In fact, what you want to do, and a little bit about the hand grips, the alternated grips, that's going to allow you to grip heavier weight. So it's going to help with your grip strength. If you can do them overhand, particularly at the beginning, I do encourage my clients to do that because it's a little bit more balanced. If you're going to go to the alternating grip, I would recommend that you alternate the overhand and underhand to different sides, because if you're getting into some pretty heavy weights, you might notice some differences in the way your back is shaped, just on the basis of one side's getting a little bit stronger in a different angle than the other.
That's right.
And then, with basically with your feet, you literally want your toes underneath the bar, and you want to bring that bar directly up your center point. So it's practically dragging, if not dragging, across your legs as you come up.
That's exactly it. And I think, like we had said before, practicing that proper form, even with just the bar itself, would really, really help your technique and your confidence too in going heavier. I think the putting on the weight, that's kind of like a guy thing. We want to keep on putting more and more weight, but that's where injuries would come. Practicing the proper form, even having someone look at you and spot you would really help it out.
Yeah. And then the other side, like you said about the bouncing, take your time with this at the bottom. I mean, when you get down to the bottom and don't be afraid to take your hands off the bar and just get completely reset. Form is so important that a lot of times if you're doing the bouncing, now the bar is outside of your center of mass, so you're pulling at a bad angle. So make sure that bar's tight and make sure you're in a good position each rep. And that might even take a reset. If you got to sit there and take a breath, get yourself in position and go again, that's perfectly fine. The deadlift is kind of one of those exercises. We're not trying to build stamina here. We're trying to build strength. And that's on the up and down, and having control of the bar up and then down is really important.
Absolutely, couldn't agree with you more. I think the more you practice it, the easier it will get, the more comfortable you'll be, and you'll definitely get much better results without any injuries.
Yeah. Now, lunges are, to me, they're one of the more versatile exercises because you can lunge forward, lunge back, lunge from side to side. I use different variations of these with clients, particularly when we're first getting started and we're really focusing on body weight movements. Because there's no point in doing a deadlift with no bar, no weight for strength. You may as well just do body weight squats, and then I'll throw in some lunges. Can you talk a little bit about using care and how we would want to do lunges?
Yeah, I think lunges is, as you said, very versatile for the main reason that it might be difficult to do with the other exercises. Most of the other exercises make you work forward and backward, almost in a straight line, whereas lunges, you can work forward, backward, and left and right. And I think those are the motions that I think we're weaker at. So lunges, I think, is a great exercise to do. Again, as with the other exercises, your form is important. Some people have the tendency of bringing their knees past their feet, and that can cause a lot of pain and discomfort in your knees. So making sure that your knee does not pass the front of your foot would definitely help you out. Almost think that you're sticking your butt out backwards when you're doing your lunge, and keeping your head up, not looking towards the floor, keeping your chest up, and really say, okay, I'm going to really go and focus on the muscle that you want to work on. So the way I do it, and of course there's different variations, I normally like to go eccentrically or slowly going down, and then pushing myself a little quicker going upwards. Yeah.
And the eccentric is where you're building most of your strength anyway. So slowing that down means you're going to have more time under tension. So it's going to make it a much harder exercise, but being in control allows you to really focus on where your knee placement is, that your knee's tracking out over your toe, but not passing the toe on the lunge. And so you have really good control. And then, yes, using your heel, using your whole foot, and firing back up into the starting position. A really good exercise. One of the reasons I really like side lunges is, as we get older, balance problems can come about, and a fall is typically something that happens to quite a few people when we get older. And so things you can do now to build lateral strength is very important. I also like to use it with people who want to run, because they're doing a lot of running in the forward plane, and therefore they're not really getting that side-to-side lateral movement. So this is an opportunity to kind of build out the strength throughout the movement.
Absolutely, and if I would just add to it, when one runs, it's not a pure straight line. You do allow your leg to move out laterally, and then might go forward. But not as often. We don't train that lateral component, so that's why lunges is great. It works on your balance, your coordination, and your going out, and even the going. And those are the parts that, for myself, are even more important than the straight up and down.
Yes. So now you had a section in a book where you got into food and, and eating, and I've always been a big proponent of telling people, what the food you eat is a fuel, but it's also the building blocks that you're going to use to make your body, and so what you eat does have an effect on how your body functions over time. But can you talk about some foods that we'd want to consider just to make sure we're taking care of our knees?
Sure. Some of the good foods that I suggest is fish, especially fatty fish like salmon or tuna, mackerel. They have a great amount of vitamin D, and a diet high in vitamin D is great with keeping your knees strong. And they definitely have, I'm sure a lot of the people have heard, omega-3s.
Yeah.
Omega-3 fatty acids are really, really good in strengthening the joints and keeping them healthy. Some of the other things would be pineapples and papayas. These foods have enzymes, high-active enzymes that can help with the healing process of your tendons. The enzymes are called bromelain and papain, and they're very active in the bloodstream, and they can help with healing an injured tendon that you might have much more quickly. And another very important one is the vitamin E that is found in green leafy vegetables or avocados or seeds, and they're rich in that vitamin D. And vitamin D has been shown to reduce inflammation. So that is something great to take. Bringing down that inflammation will definitely help you. I prefer telling people to take the vitamin E more with real food than in supplementation. If you can do it that way.
Yeah, I'm a big fan of getting your vitamins from food myself. Yeah.
There you go. The one thing I could say is also some of the foods that would actually make it worse for your knees. For example, sugar or refined carbs. Sugar has this component inside of it called the cytokines, and they can cause or trigger a release of inflammatory messengers, and they can increase the inflammation. Like a lot of soda drinks, they can increase the risk of arthritis I think almost by about 63%. So
step away from
sugar,
the
as we all know, is not. Yeah,
so step away from
it's not the best thing in the world. Exactly. Some of the other things would be certain type of oils, like corn oil or sunflower, so those type of oils, and not olive oil, but soybeans or corn or sunflower. They have omega-6 fatty acids, and I think we consume about 25 times more omega-6 than omega-3s, and those oils will actually cause much more issues because they can, again, bring up the inflammation and the irritation. So I would prefer the olive oil component than the safflower and the soybean oil or sunflower oil, all those types. And lastly, and this one might not be that much of a no-brainer, but alcohol and tobacco. They're really not great. Alcohol consumption can actually increase the level of gout in your joints. And, of course, smoking other than the obvious, can also help with the developing rheumatoid arthritis. So these are things that should be avoided.
Now, the supplements, glucosamine and chondroitin, what are your thoughts about those?
You know what? I think they're great. I think you can take them. The research is still out on it in terms of is it a miracle? It's definitely not a miracle cure. And some studies have actually shown to help reduce the wear and tear, and it can also prevent joint inflammation, and it can decrease some of your pain. Can it fix your joints up by itself? No, it cannot. But if it's something that you feel strongly in taking, then I'd be okay with that.
Okay. And then, we've heard things about cayenne pepper and turmeric.
Mm-hmm. They're all really good. They're all different spices. They definitely will, again, bring down the inflammation bring down the irritation and actually help you feel better.
Yeah. And I like in the book you say, broccoli is really good in vitamin C and calcium. So you really should be eating your broccoli.
Absolutely. We just gotta make people just don't put a ton of cheese whiz on it.
Good quality cheese and a little bit goes a long way.
Here you go.
So I want to thank you for being a part of the 40 Plus Fitness podcast. If someone wanted to get in touch with you or learn more about the book, where would you like for me to send them?
Sure. This was fun. Thank you so much for having me. People can contact me on my website, www.georgedemirakos.com. There's a certain section on the website where you can just write me any question you like, and I can definitely do my best to answer you back.
Awesome. Well, this is going to be episode 301, so you can go to 40plusfitnesspodcast.com/301, and I'll make sure to have the link there and a link to the book. So again, George, thank you so much for being here today.
Thank you for having me.
Now, before you take off, I'm going to ask you a big favor. Would you please go to 40plusfitnesspodcast.com/review. That'll take you to iTunes where you can leave us a rating and review. It really does help the show get up in the ratings, and as a result, more and more people find this podcast. So I'd really appreciate if you would go to 40plusfitnesspodcast.com/review and leave us a rating and review today. And if you've already done that, then why not take just a moment and post a link to this episode, 40plusfitnesspodcast.com/301, to your Facebook or Twitter account and share it with your friends. Thank you. Next time on the 40 Plus Fitness Podcast, we meet Dr. Martha Claire Morris and discuss her book, Diet for the Mind, the latest science on what to eat to prevent Alzheimer's and cognitive decline. Until then, have a happy and healthy week.